So this is the Canon RF 50mm f1.2L lens. The RF means that it is made for the new Canon full-frame mirrorless mount. And there's only really a few of these lenses, these RF mount lenses available right now. 50mm is my favorite focal length. It always has been. I recommend to anybody who is getting a prime lens, that should be their first prime lens. I've been using 50mm since my very first prime lens many years ago. It was the 50mm 1.8 lens from Canon. And anytime someone's asking me questions about, starting up their photography, getting a camera, getting lenses, I always recommend getting a 50mm 1.8 lens. It's about $100. It's a great prime lens to start out with. From there, I got the Canon 50mm 1.4 lens, and then for a while I was using the Canon 50mm 1.2 lens. That was in the old EF mount, which was a great lens also. And I used that for years actually, until Sigma came along with their 50mm 1.4 art lens. They came out with this whole new line of lenses, art, sports, things like that. The prime lenses, 35, 85, 50 from Sigma at 1.4 are really nice. So I really love the quality of the Sigma 1.4 art lens, so I was using that for a while until I got the Canon R and I decided to switch over from the 5D4 DSLR camera to the Canon R mirrorless system. Now I can still use all of my old, they're not even really old, all of my classic Canon EF lenses with my Canon R camera using the adapter, so I can still use all of those. But I tried out the RF 50mm 1.2, the new one, compared it to the Sigma 1.4, and I really like this better. Not only because of the extra little bit of light between the 1.2 and the 1.4, but just the overall design and overall image quality. Like I said, I love the 50mm focal length, so when I saw that this was available in the RF mount, I figured it really should be my first RF lens and I would give it a try, and I really loved it. So this replaced my Sigma 1.4 art lens. This is now my go-to 50mm lens. It mounts perfectly, pairs perfectly with the Canon R camera. It was really designed, I guess they were designed together. It really shines on that camera, and you can really tell the difference between non-RF lenses like the EF lenses with the adapter. You can really tell the difference between those and this. When you're using this lens, it may just be me, it just seems like things are a little bit quicker, things work just a little bit better. Maybe it's just the design, they were meant to be together. I really like the way that this works with the R camera. This has, like all the Canon lenses, an autofocus, manual focus switch on here, and it's also got this distance limiter where if you're going to be shooting more than a few feet away, out into infinity, switch it over to that setting. This way it's not hunting around for focus at something near, it's only trying to focus on something far away. So it speeds things up. If it's not grabbing focus right away, it's not searching all the way back to something near and far, it's keeping that far distance. Or just switch it back to full, which basically gives you, it's trying to focus on everything, which is great. It also has, which is a great new feature of these RF lenses, is the control ring. So there's a ring right here on the end. In addition to, it's right next to the focus ring, there's a ring here on the end. You can kind of hear it click. Each one of those clicks is a stop of whatever you want it to be. You can assign this ring to different functions in your camera settings. So you can assign it to change your ISO, you can assign it to change your exposure compensation, your aperture value, your shutter speed, whatever you want it to control, it's going to control that, which is great because now my left hand is holding my lens and my right hand is doing all the work. It's pushing the buttons, it's turning the dials, it's changing things. Now I know, and I've got this set right now to my ISO settings. I'm looking through, I'm composing my image, and my left hand right here can really just quickly change my ISO on the fly. I had it set to exposure compensation at first, and I really wasn't using it very much for that. So this is a great way to be able to add a function to a lens. It's really very nice and smooth, and it's just going to speed things up. I'm not just using one hand now to control things. Now I know I can control the whatever I want it to be, the ISO in this case, with this control ring on the end, which is very nice. What Canon's also done, and this is kind of a little bit of an aside, is they've created an adapter between the EF lenses and the R mount that actually has a control ring in it. You can buy that one that has a control ring in it. It goes between the lens and the camera, so it's going to be over here instead, but it serves the exact same purpose. You can assign that control ring to whatever you want it to be. This way you get the same sort of nice convenient function with all of your EF lenses that you have with a lens like this. But importantly, image quality wise, it's really an amazing lens. I'm getting really great shots from this. Sharpness is tack sharp. Like I said, I've said before, with the Canon R, I'm hitting autofocus all the time. So even at 1.2, which has razor thin depth of field, I'm hitting my spots, I'm hitting my focus all the time. Very sharp where it's in focus, and really the whole purpose of a 1.2 lens is to be shooting wide open at 1.2. And wide open, it's very nice and sharp. There's a little bit of vignette at 1.2, even at 1.4, which is easily correctable in Lightroom if you want to correct it. Sometimes you don't want to correct it, sometimes you like that effect, which I do a lot of the times. Vignette is not a big deal, it's very easily correctable. So I'll show you a few examples here. One of the questions is, what's the difference between 1.4 and 1.2? You know, other than a little bit of extra light, which really doesn't change that much, is there really much of a difference in the depth of field, in the background blur, in the bokeh? Is there much of a difference between 1.2 and 1.4? And the answer is yes, there is. There definitely is. Just like there's a difference between 2.0 and 1.4, any little bit that you can get, any little bit of an extra softness, an extra shallow depth of field that you can get over what you would be using otherwise with a 1.4 or over what other people are using, it's going to give you an advantage. It's going to give you something that your images have that other people's images don't have. So yeah, that 1.2 gives you a little bit of an extra light compared to the 1.4, which means your shutter speed can maybe be a little bit faster, or your ISO can be just a little bit lower. That really doesn't make a big difference. The bigger difference is in the extra shallow depth of field that you're going to get shooting wide open at 1.2 with this lens. The diameter, the filter diameter is 77 millimeters, which I already have a few 77 millimeter filters, neutral density and circular polarizer with my other lenses, so it fits nice into that range. It's big and heavy. Like I said, it really balances perfectly with my Canon R camera, even though it is big and heavy. But it's big and heavy because there's a lot of glass in there. It's a 1.2 lens, which is really a nice, unique lens. It's a great thing to use. So I gotta say, this is really in that mid focal range, you know, between 35 millimeters and 85 millimeters. This is probably the best lens that I've ever used, and that's saying a lot. I really have had a lot of great lenses. I love the lenses. I keep them when I love them, and I kept the Sigma 1.4 for a long time, the art lens, because I really like the way that the images looked from that. I like this one more, I really do. So it's the Canon RF 50 millimeter f1.2L lens. Check it out. I'll put a link in the description below. You can check that out. If you have any questions, if you're thinking about buying this, if it's a quality thing, don't think twice. It's really an amazing lens. But if you have any questions or anything, let me know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. I'm going to put a link here to a playlist for all of the R-related videos that we've made, and I'll put a link here to, if you want to check that out, also the review of the Sigma 1.4 art lens. So you can check that out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.